Alright, good afternoon everyone. My name is Patrick Hawe. I'm an associated member of T3 Trading Group, which is an SEC registered broker-dealer and member of FINRA SIPC. All trades placed by myself are placed through T3 Trading Group. You should carefully consider whether trading is suitable for you in light of your own financial condition. Please pause the video, read this disclosure in full. And positions disclosure, just pins. Sold the rest of my UNG on Friday. For better or for worse, as it turns out, it was for better today. So just pins there. No new swings from today. So not a whole lot to talk about today. We'll just kind of go through what happened, which wasn't really too much, and then just what we can look for going forward, which is a lot. So coming into today, we had pretty much not much of a game plan at all, really. Both a game plan of not to do much and just not many names to even look at. I mean, more often than not, when there's days where we don't, the markets might be choppy or sideways, there's usually a good amount of names you can come up with still from like single stock news or upgrades and downgrades. But I don't know, there just wasn't really a whole lot this morning. So we weren't really looking at a whole lot. Market was in a tough place because it was a gap up on a day 3 where short-term tactical sentiment's not quite in the red. VIX is getting oversold to the downside, but it's not quite at, I'm looking for a couple things for extremeness. It's not quite at that extreme area yet. Rates were down. TLT was up. That changed throughout the day a bit. The dollar was down. This finished off the lows, but not up too much. So our plan for the day was really just more or less, just wasn't really too much out there. There was the Apple. So what happened with Apple this morning was Goldman initiated Apple as a buy with a price target of 190. What happened was the analyst, Goldman, from what I understand, Goldman took off coverage of Apple, and then the analyst left Goldman, and a different analyst is now in that position. So this new analyst initiated coverage. So it's not even necessarily like Goldman changing their thought process as much as just it's a different analyst. So they didn't have coverage on it before, and then today they reinitiated coverage with a buy and a 190 price target. A lot of people are kind of treating it as an upgrade. It wasn't necessarily that though. But this Apple traded pretty well off the open, and that rolled over today too. So I mean, I don't know, there were a couple things this morning. There's never nothing, but more or less game plan was, just kind of let's wait and see for how things develop. So what happened throughout the day was, and let's just take a look at SPY, IWM, QQQ. So SPY, red candle with a tail. IWM, which was our weakest name today, bearish engulfing candle pretty much, or almost anyway. Didn't quite break Friday's high. And then Q, similar to SPY, tail, ugly candle, still a little bit extended on the upside. SPY also, tail, ugly candle, still a little bit extended on the upside though. And the Dow, same thing, tail, not so much of an ugly candle, but a little bit extended from that daily ADMA. So this morning was really just, it was a morning rally that fizzled out where we were up this morning and we were down, and overall, again, we're just kind of in neutral land here, still a little bit extended. The morning rally was really fueled by a couple of bigger things. Definitely Apple was a big part of that for sure. And the IWS, so the IWM we always talk about as like our risk on, risk off gauge. And the IWM pretty much from the opening bell was risk off all day. So look at like SPY's intraday, and then that's Apple's intraday. Little shaky in the first 20 minutes, but pretty grindy after that. And this IWM traded very, very weak. Opened, traded poorly, bounced, faded that bounce, tried to maybe give a double bottom here with this candle. I remember talking about this. That immediately got faded back down. They tried to hold 190, or no, 190's down here. They're trying to hold mid 190s, took it down to 190. Then they tried to hold 190. And then when they lost 190, this really just died for the rest of the day until, I guess, a little bit of short covering into the close there. and that eventually leaked into pretty much everything else. So we always talk about IWM again being risk on, risk off. That was saying risk off all day from the open. So some of us were looking for some shorts. They made the short hard though with, like, again, IWM giving you that signal, but SPY and Qs trending up in a pretty grindy way until, got a little bit crazy up here. Apple trending up in a grindy way. The VIX trending down in a grindy way. And then this finally took like an hour to base out and then poked its head up a little bit. Didn't really give you too much there, but that eventually turned up a little bit. This dollar, which was down and also trended down. So the bulls had like pretty much everything going for them except the IWM off the open, but the IWM was only not going for them. It was doing the complete opposite. It was, it wasn't like trading sideways, but it was going straight down pretty much. So the bulls had like everything going for them. The VIX lower, the dollar lower, rates, everything except that IWM. But that signal's a powerful enough signal. And usually too, it's not always, I talked about that concept the other week when I did the afternoon meeting with it's not always that you're wrong. More often than not, if you know what you're doing and you know what you're looking at, you're not necessarily wrong so much as just things change. So if you were shorting SPY and QQQ today with no out going on the IWM and kind of like that internal weakness, you would have ended up right. If you're doing it with outs, it was pretty hard intraday trying to be too perfect with that. But if you were doing that, if you were shorting Qs and SPY based on the IWM going down, and then the IWM found a bottom at 190 and rallied back to 191, you wouldn't have been wrong necessarily. It just would have changed. That risk on, risk off signal would have dissipated. So, shorts could have paid a little bit today. But, just point is, like, overall, it was a pretty slower day. I know we rolled over a little bit into the close here. I guess just main thing, because it's hard. Oh, so I guess the point I was going to make was when you see, and we've seen this before often, when you see clashing signals like that, it gets to the point where one thing has to break, really. We've seen that where, like, sometimes the market is weak, but Tesla and Nvidia are strong, like we've seen that recently. Or today it was the IWM is weak, but the rest of the market's strong. And just things like that, there always is a certain amount of correlation. So things like that can only press for too long. Can it press for another 5 minutes? For sure. Can it press for half a day? Yes. But you're not usually, if ever, going to get the Qs literally straight up all day and the IWM straight down all day. It's just not, I don't want to say, never say never, but that's just pretty rare. And the IWM ended up winning today, which makes sense too. That's just more of a better risk on, risk off gauge. How were those semis? Those semis were decent too. But yeah, so when you see conflicting things where, like, okay, SPY's trading up, Qs are trading up, I assume VIX and dollar are trading down, right? Like, things, that's how you should be thinking about the market and where it's come from and where you think it's going to go. Is you don't just think the market's going to go up, you think the VIX is going to go down and the dollar is going to go down and rates are going to be stable and this and that and that and this, and therefore the market's going to go up, right? Like, it's not just the market's going to go up. And that's why we look at, like, VIX and everything throughout the day, and we say, okay, the market's not just going to go down, but we think the VIX is going to go up, therefore the market's going to go down. So, like, today, it was pretty much a solid half day of that conflicting signal with IWM lower, which was a complete opposite signal for the bulls, where, again, the bulls had everything else going for them. Qs grinding up, VIX grinding lower, dollar grinding lower. So if you saw all those bull signals, you would definitely be thinking IWM's probably screaming at day highs, and then it's not. That pairing off can't last too long. Again, it's rare for that to last a full day. And it'd be one thing, the market probably wouldn't have rolled over as bad as it did today if IWM just stopped being weak at 190, and maybe it doesn't rally to day highs, but it kind of just everything else holds it up, so the market just IWM chops 190 for the rest of the day. But that ended up failing, and therefore the strength ended up rolling over. So just, I guess, kind of a lesson on when you're looking at the market's a confusing thing. There's a lot of signals going on everywhere all the time. But certain things do hold true, give or take. And that's an example today where, honestly, I probably could have and should have been a bit better with, not that I didn't short today, because I did, but I probably could have been a bit better with emphasizing to you guys to be smaller and looser and sticking with them. But I don't know. I was kind of looking after the morning, I was just looking for a strong close, and then I was ready to be more aggressive tomorrow on the short, and this afternoon kind of took that away. So that's today. Really, really slow day. And as we said at the end of the day, enjoy it while it lasts, because it's probably not lasting too much longer. So now going forward, again, that afternoon rollover definitely took away the edge for that smaller picture short. Bigger picture, if you got like your macro shorts on, that's different. You're probably not executing a macro trend on a 5-minute signal. At least you shouldn't be. So market is pretty much back to, I would say, neutral here. If I had to say overbought or oversold, and I couldn't say neutral, I would say more overbought, but more or less in neutral zone. And so we got a whole bunch of data coming up. I'll just read through it real quick because, again, as you guys know, technicals don't matter too much when we get all these big data points coming, and we're in a much more neutral environment. I think now we're not, whereas like before, when I say before, I want to say last fall or so, even last summer, just sentiment was so bad, positioning was so bad that we could just get any good news and the risk would be to the upside. If we were in this spot, if we were at this date today, but the market was like it was over here, and we had pretty much been going up for a month straight, we'd be more overbought, and I would say the risk is to the downside. But I mean, we had a nice move from those lows. We've cooled off nice from those highs. We found a low. We just had a nice 2-day rally. We just cooled that off a little bit. I'd say we're pretty neutral, so I don't really have a good feel as to, the edges to the downside or the upside based on if we get good surprises or bad surprises. I just know that we have a lot of data coming, and the market's probably going to move off of it. So tomorrow is Tuesday, the March 7th. So tomorrow, Powell starts testifying. He testifies at 10 a.m. tomorrow and Wednesday, so Powell will be speaking a bit. That can certainly move the market. Just, he could say the right or wrong word, and algos are going to eat that up. On top of that, we have consumer credit tomorrow afternoon, which hasn't moved the market too much, but I still like to pay attention to that. Then Wednesday morning, 8:15, we get ADP non-farm employment change. And then at 10, we get JOLTS job opening. And also the Bank of Canada's rate decision, which we've actually have moved off some of the Bank of Canada's words before. They were I forget what day it was back here, but we had a big up day on actually the Bank of Canada pretty much getting ready to pause. So Bank of Canada Wednesday, 2 jobs numbers Wednesday, Powell Wednesday, Thursday's weekly unemployment claims, Friday, more jobs numbers, unemployment rate, non-farm employment change, average hourly earnings. So Powell speaking this week, multiple jobs numbers, multiple other Econ reports as well. Fed Beige Book at Wednesday, for example, consumer credit, final wholesale. And then if none of that can move us this week, then next Tuesday, a week from tomorrow, is our next CPI inflation report, which, I mean, that's CPI. So, so I think that's all I really got to talk about. Just like, that I think that's where we are now. It was a slower day. We had a slow morning grind that slowly rolled over in the afternoon. I guess just taking a look at VIX and VVIX. Maybe so VVIX gapped up this morning. The VIX kind of did, but not really as much so with the market. But the VVIX gapped up in a decently notable way, which was concerning off the open, but it faded the gap pretty hard. This didn't close too well. We did close off the Friday low. This is also an 8 count now to the downside. So if VVIX is down today or down tomorrow, it'll be a downside 9er. So at this point, again, if after today, still a bit more neutral. If I had to say overbought or oversold, though, I would definitely say we're still overbought. I don't think we're overbought, but again, just if I had to pick one or the other. And still watching at this point, again, our positive divergence that we've been talking about for like a week now plus in this has played out. We've had our move off of almost 3,900. We've had that positive divergence move played out. Took a couple days. Now, if anything, we're going to be looking for bearish divergence here, aka we almost got it today too. If this closed better, I'd be a little bit more nervous today, but this gapped up but didn't close that well. So we'll keep watching VVIX, VIX land to see if we get any divergence there. But yeah, other than that, that's it really. Just pretty neutral here going into a lot of upcoming data where again, I don't think we're overbought per se, but we are not in a place, and I've said that for weeks now, we're not in a place where like sentiment is at all-time lows and positioning is at all-time lows and no one has any positioning in this market. That's not the case at all. So we can definitely move up. There's always more cash out there, but we can also move down. There's plenty of people with some positioning that I'm sure could get underwater. And that's all I got to talk about. So yeah, happy to Bank of Japan on Friday as well from Mike. Yeah, I was honestly kind of scanning some. There's probably a few things I missed, but yeah. Point is, it was really slow today. It's probably not going to be slow for the whole week. So yeah, we'll see what happens. But happy to answer any questions, comments, concerns, complaints that you guys got. I know it was a pretty slow day. I mean, we had some intraday movement, but more or less it was pretty much just a grind up and then a grind down. Let me check YouTube. I am seeing Chi on YouTube. What are your thoughts on 0 DTE opinion options affecting the market? It's definitely had a big impact, and it's getting bigger as those get more popular. JP Morgan put out a note today. I'm sure there'll be some articles on it tonight. Feel free to look it up. But JP Morgan put out a note today about that, and some of these bigger firms are starting to talk about the possibility of, that could be there could be a black swan event from that, just from people caught offside positionings, or fuel to the fire, adding more fuel to the fire one day where we really collapse. But we'll see. Let me finish reading your question. Also, how they're affecting VIX, VVIX. Would I use VIX 9-day better than VIX? No, not necessarily, but I've never looked at that VIX 9-day. I know what I think I know what you're talking about, and if it is what I think it is, I don't disagree with looking at that. I just haven't myself. Maybe I should. And finally, what are your thoughts on the potentially new 12 noon expiration options? I seen the chatter on the noon expiration options. I don't know. I mean, pretty much any day, if you look at the options volume and sort it by volume, pretty much any day, the top 5 to 10 is going to be all SPY or S&P same day stuff. Um, whether a big bad event could happen from it or not, I don't know. It probably could, but you need like a. I would think you need a real catalyst for that too. Um, it's not just gonna randomly happen, but something where we have like a giant gap one day for some reason. Um, but yeah, look for either tonight or tomorrow morning. Look for a note from J.P. Morgan about that. They put out. I gotta reread it. I didn't read it too well today. It came out this afternoon, but they put out a note about potential impacts of that, which looks pretty interesting. And the 12 noon one, just I don't know. That's annoying. It seems unnecessary, but the more volume is done, the more money the brokers make. So I don't know. Don't really have thoughts on it other than it seems unnecessary. And if anything, we'll just add to intraday shakeouts and intraday. I don't even want to say intraday volatility, just intraday sloppiness, which is kind of annoying, but whatever. Going back to the VTF and TNX semi that reported tonight. Down. Yeah, Mike reminding us for Bank of Japan on Friday as well. WW. Yeah, I'd want to see their numbers. They have a lot of debt though, like a lot of debt. Let me just see if I can see their numbers real quick. Looks like their guidance wasn't great. Well, I was just looking at it because I know it's such a cheap name, and I got some sweeps last week, and it's to the point, honestly, with this thing where you could if you think they're not going bankrupt, now's the time to start buying it. Not sure if they're going bankrupt or not. I really don't know enough about it, but from this source that I use, their market cap is like 274 million, and they have like 1.2 billion in debt. So they have an EV of 1.5 billion, with obviously most of that being debt. But even still, just the equities at this point looks like getting priced for bankruptcy. So some fundamental homework needed there. Hey Pat, just curious, in your opinion, does guidance weigh more than EPS beat? Yes, for sure, for sure. So yeah, for sure. Stocks go up for many reasons. Well, I guess the one reason actually is more buyers than sellers, but stocks appreciate. Capital appreciation in stocks and equities usually comes from growth prospectus. Like Shopify over the last, when Shopify is one that comes to mind, just because they were growing and growing and growing and everything, and they just had so much growth priced into them. That's a good reason why. They want to see, whatever the EPS reported, that's fine, but are they still growing? Are they still growing at the rate that they were growing? Are they growing at a faster rate, a slower rate? Like, that's what's really going to determine it. And that's usually, again, that's what moves. I'm not talking about moving a stock in a day. I'm talking about the stocks that go up 500, 1,000% over like, a couple years or whatever. It's all about growth, which comes from guidance. So yeah. What's your technical take on ENVX? I like that igniting candle on Friday. My technical take would be, this kind of looks like a mess. I don't really know this name at all. Out of curiosity, let me just type it up real quick. Engaged in designing, developing, and manufacturing silicon anode lithium-ion batteries. Interesting. Looks like they do not make money. They have a pretty big market cap. And what'd you say? I was just looking to see if it holds 9. Yeah, 9. I don't know the name at all. So technically, yeah, 9. If you like the name and have done your homework, I would probably use 850. But it really, technically speaking, it shouldn't trade below 9. Technically speaking, it probably shouldn't even trade below 925 at this point, purely technically speaking. So yeah, I don't hate it. But I mean, looking back, this is going to run in, this has resistance every single dollar higher. So, yeah, I don't know. It's got a lot of work to do. If you like it fundamentally, then maybe a bigger picture swing versus like a bigger level. Otherwise, I like what you're seeing technically, but I'm sure 10's resistance, 11, 12, 13, just this has a whole ton of resistance on the way up from all of that. But it's a start. It's a start. Yeah, it looks like they lose money. From the first glance I took, it looks like they lose money. Yes, they lost. They lose cash every quarter, it looks like, or every year so far anyway. But I guess you never know. So, I don't know. Not too many thoughts, Mike. 9 should hold now. Bunch of resistance ahead. What is positive/negative divergence with regard to VVIX VIX in the market? I've heard you cover it. Yeah, sure. Yeah, just a quick review. So SPY and VIX are somewhat opposite correlated. It's definitely not perfect though. And again, you have to understand what goes into it. You know, what makes, like, the VIX moves based on S&P put buying. It's not just like a magical fear gauge per se. There are like measurements that go into it. So usually when all things are normal, when the market is grinding higher, the VIX is grinding lower. But then sometimes you get extremes in one area or the other where things have to revert back to the norm a little bit. And you also you can't have like perfect trends forever. It's just never existed. And so, we'll see. But so far that's never existed, a complete and utter perfect trend. So you look for signs, and the VVIX is the vol of vol. This is the leader. This gives the early signs. These signs can be as much as 5 days, a week early even. But again, so all things in a perfect world, the market in a grindy, again, like perfect, just like grindy world, market's grinding higher, VIX is grinding lower. But we've seen so basically divergence happens when that's not happening. So it could come in a few ways. Bearish divergence, I guess bullish divergence for the VIX, which would be bearish for the S&P, which might be what we're starting to see. All right, sorry, I know I'm going in circles a bit, but I'm like answering this off the top of my head. So first I'll go over what we just saw, which was bearish divergence in the VIX market, which was bullish for the S&P. We saw that starting at, I guess, looks like middle of February here, but in the middle of February, early mid-February, the VVIX made a high on February 9th and then made a lower high on February 21st. The S&P made a low on February 9th. That was this big red, I forget what this was from, but this giant red candle here. And then February 23rd, when that VVIX made a lower high, the market made a lower low. So that was a big first sign of positive divergence. Lower low here with a lower high in VVIX. And then it proceeded to play out over the next week or so where market was like choppy and grindy lower, but it's going lower. The VIX should be choppy, grinding higher. And that VVIX was red every single day last week. And what ended up happening was we kept asking, is 4,000 going to break down a big way? Are we going to 39, 3,800? We ended up getting as low as 39.25, but then throughout all of that time, that VIX was showing divergence. It wasn't, the market was much weaker than the VIX was strong. And so that divergence paired off, and that's paired off. That's done now. So now what we're looking for going forward, if this market's going to break down at all, or if there's any signs that might come. And the reason that's going to come is probably because rates are not done and rates still have higher to go. They got a little bit, you can see this was grindy and then like this was a little extreme, this gap down last week. So is that the high for rates, or do rates still have more to go? Also the same thing with the dollar. This high in the dollar here. I remember this was a little extreme too. Does the dollar have higher to go, or is that it for the dollar? If that's it for the dollar and rates, then market's probably holding in. If not, we're probably making another low. So that divergence sign now, what we might see today was of the first maybe little signal of it, where the market gapped up today. The S&P gapped up today. The S&P gapped up, I guess that was Friday as well. On Friday, when the S&P gapped up, the VVIX gapped down, just like it should. That's what it should do. Today, we gapped up and started to get a little upside extremeness, and the VVIX gapped up this morning. The VVIX should not gap up with the market. So that's bullish divergence in VIX land, which is bearish for the market. It ended up playing out so far in a pretty lame way. But even still, now we have over here, we had a lower high with a lower low, which was bullish. Now we have a higher low because VVIX did not break Friday's low. Now we have a higher low with a higher high in the market, which is the opposite of what happened over here. So we will see how that plays out. That will be negated if VVIX loses Friday's low. So I guess we'll see how they gap us tomorrow and everything like that. But yeah, so I hope that, who asked that question? Pam, I hope that makes sense. The market, again, things aren't black and white, but I try to, you have to like kind of think of things like black and white, even though they're not. But that's the best way I could explain it, really. And, markets, everything orderly and good. Markets grinding higher. VIX should be grinding lower. VIX grinding higher. Markets should be grinding lower. And when that's not happening, that's it. So we had bullish divergence lately. Today was a first very small but possible sign of bullish divergence, or I guess bearish divergence. So bearish for S&P. So yeah, I hope that makes sense. And even like today, I wonder if we could find an example real quick intraday. I mean, it's not great. but it looks like UVIX's low came at 11:30. SPY's high, it came around there too. Well, yeah, I don't know, nothing too great intraday, but I think you get the idea. But you can see that intraday too sometimes. Like SPY will be making a, I think we saw that intraday. Was it on Friday? Yeah, like on Friday when we were gapping up and we were looking for lower. Actually, no, that was pretty clean on Friday. Yeah, I don't know. I don't see any good intraday examples right here, but we definitely see that intraday sometimes too. See another question on YouTube. Does CFDs buying or selling affect underlying asset? Like if I shorted 1K Apple in CFDs, CFD contract for differences. I don't know. I'm gonna guess no, though. I don't know how those are made up, but like options are directly tied to the equity. You can, the equity can move based on an options order. I know that for a fact. I don't know in the CFD. I would guess no, but I'm not sure how they're priced. I don't know. Maybe someone in the room knows, but I'm honestly, I don't have a good answer for you, Funny Shark. I would guess not as much. Whereas like an option is priced with its Greeks, and like delta is based on the dollar move. So when the Apple stock price is moving, that's directly correlated to the delta implication on the overall price of that option contract. So, but yeah, not gonna give you an answer that I don't know. So yeah, I'm not 100% sure, to be honest. But I would guess not as heavily, but maybe somewhat. I don't know. You would have to look at how it's actually priced, like what makes up the price of it, and if you figure that out, you probably find your answer for yourself. Looks like I got through everything. Anyone else have any follow-ups or anything? Again, definitely a slower day, so wasn't really expecting too many questions. Alrighty, well, we'll see how they gap us. Maybe some VIX divergence coming in, but it's nothing to be excited about, really. Like if you're a bear, I wouldn't be too excited yet. I know it's a red candle, but moving average slope back up. I don't know. We'll see. We'll see how they gap us, and we'll see how all this data goes this week. We got Powell speaking tomorrow, and we got a lot of data over the next week or so. So, guess we'll see how it goes. Be ready. Have a good night, everyone, and we'll see you tomorrow morning.